Hello, numerology fans. My name is Suzanne Wagner, and I'm a professional psychic, and I have written books on tarot and numerology that you can find on Amazon and on Kindle called Integral Tarot and Integral Numerology. I'm a professional psychic, and one of the things that I use every day is numerology when I work with clients. Today, I'm going to give a brief description on how to work with the year number, which is an important number because it changes every year, starting from your birthday this particular year, and it will go until your birthday the next year. Occasionally, you will find that people who have a lot of 9s or 11s in their numbers have a tendency to run a little bit ahead of their year number because they're so intuitive and they're so insightful that they actually end up a little bit ahead of schedule, sometimes by 6 months. But this works really good in kind of giving you an understanding of what you might be dealing with and the energies or the patterns that might be impacting you in a particular year. We'll start with 2019, since I'm doing this video in 2019. If you add 2, 0, 1, and 9 together, you get a 12. If you add the 1 and the 2 together, you get a 3. So the year number this year is 3. But you actually take your birth month and your birthday and you add that to the number 3. So let's say that you were born January 18th. You remove your year number completely and you put in the year 2019. So you add the 1 plus the 1 plus the 8, which becomes a 10. You take that 10 and you add the 3 for the 2019 and you get a 13. You add the 1 and the 3 together and you get a 4. So from your birthday this year until your birthday next year, 2020, you will actually be learning and working with the energy of something called neutral mind, which is a very high level game. It's about finding balance. Just kind of know that if you're looking for balance, sometimes that means things are pretty out of balance, because the only way to test yourself is sometimes to put you in chaos so that you are forced to learn to find that balance. You can go to my books, Integral Tarot and Integral Numerology, to find out more about your entire numerology pattern and the year. You can also go to my website, and on my website you will see a section, a tab that says year numbers, which also explains this in great detail. And you can scroll down and you can get some insights as to each of the individual numbers and what's going on for you that particular year. But because I have you here on the video, we're going to kind of do a short and sweet thing. So if you add all the numbers together and you end up with the number 10 or the number 1, because if you add 1 and 0 together, it becomes a 10 or a 1. In that moment this year, you have a choice. You can choose the number 1, which is about individuality and humility and authenticity, or you can choose the number 10, which is about power and radiance and boldness and courage and risk and starting things, being an entrepreneur, moving forward. You can see that you might flip back and forth between those two numbers in a year. So there's some moments that to be an entrepreneur, you might have to be extremely authentic and very real and humble and sincere and ask for help. And yet you are standing up for yourself and moving forward. If your number adds up to a number 2, the number 2 is called negative mind or critical mind. So you might have to watch that negative critic on the inside. You might have to be a little bit more of the bullshit detector and weigh both sides of anything and to take a really good look at both sides of the coin, that things might not be exactly what they seem. So it's better to look behind the cabinet and under the bed and under the rug to make sure that you have all the information before you make a decision. But it's also a year to remember to not be so critical of others, and especially to not be critical of yourself. So don't beat yourself up for little things that go wrong, and to be kind to yourself. If your year number adds up to the number 3, the number 3 is called the year of positive mind. The number 3 year is sort of like a roller coaster that you can't get off of. So it goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down, and it's like, how did I get on this ride? But ultimately, it's more positive than the previous year, which was the 2 year, because you tend to go up and you have a little dip, and then you go up again and you have a little dip and you go up again. So don't freak out when you get that little dip, which is just your ego trying to kind of hold you back from going for your dream. So the test is when you're positive, you're like, wow, this is great. This is working really well. And know the moment that that happens, it's going to have a little dip. And that's that moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to listen to myself. I'm going to believe in myself. I'm going to trust myself because I know it's going to go back up again. If your year number adds up to a number 4, like I said before, it's about neutral mind. It's about finding that middle ground, finding that harmony, finding that peace, finding that inner stability, and from that place of inner stability to be very negotiative and to be very fair and just and noble and generous with others. It puts you into a position where you're going to have to communicate a lot that particular year. If you go into the number 5 year, the number 5 year is the number of the physical body. It can be a health crisis year. So if you're older or if you're having a little bit of health problems, you want to pay more attention to that. It can be something where it's happened to me on a 5 year that I got a little bug and then I couldn't get rid of the bug. It took me a while to get rid of the bug. But the 5 year is about healing and teaching. So it's asking you to be grounded and stable and practical and down to earth, realistic, consistent, reliable, steady, honest, and integrous. So it's about the physical body, the health and well-being of the body, and staying very real with everything happening in your life. If you have a year number that ends up being a number 6, the number 6 is the number of purity. It's the number of spirituality. It's that authenticity that comes from the sharing of your deepest heart, your deepest love. I personally like a 6 year because it's also called the hermit year. Because in ancient spiritual traditions, oftentimes nuns and monks and priests have to be silent. They have to go within. They have to be very present. They have to feel through their own issues without the distraction of external forces. So when I'm in a 6 year, I love it because I'm like, I'm just going to do me. The rest of the world can go a little crazy, but I'm going to just take care of me, and I'm going to take care of my heart and what I need to do for my spiritual development and my goals. If your year number adds up to the number 7, the number 7 is about boundaries, strategies, and structures. So that means you might have to say no. You might have to draw the line. You also, after being in the 6 year, you might find that you have these new ideas and you're ready to kind of go out in the world and say, I'm going to do this. I've had a year of going inside and going, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And now I know what I want, so I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to start to create that structure that will give me some momentum and I can change things in the world. This is a number of architecture, interior design, feng shui, drafting, trying to figure things out, trying to put things together. You might want to build something. Any of those things are really good in a 7 year. If your year number adds up into an 8, the 8 year is about grief and loss and sadness. Now, this is sort of important because in this particular system, here you have in the 7 year, you have expanded and you've taken a risk and you've put yourself out there and you've created a structure and you're kind of like, woohoo, yay, I'm good. We're going to go forward. And it's always funny how the universe goes, you sure about that? Are you really ready for that? And you get hit, and oftentimes you get hit on your ego. So something will cause you sadness, like that didn't work as easily as I thought it was. I had a great plan. I had things really working. And this is that test to see if you are willing to keep making adjustments, because life doesn't just get handed to you. I mean, you have to make a plan and then you have to modify the plan and then you have to try again and you have to try again. So be ready to have to modify the plan. Don't get stressed out about it. Breathe, because the 8 is about prana and breath. But about 30% of the time, which is actually a lot, You can have something external to you impact you, like somebody in your family goes into a health crisis, somebody could die. You could have something that triggers emotions for you in a very strong way. So I remember one time I was in an 8-year, and I actually was working on my teeth, and my teeth were too tight, and so they were spreading them apart. And when they did that, all of a sudden, I actually had an experience of releasing a lot of sadness, and it wasn't that I was sad at a thing. It was just this sadness that was in my life that was coming out. And the dentist told me, he said, yeah, women hold garbage in their mouth and men hold garbage in their low back. So men, when they hold sadness, end up with low back pain. But women, when they hold sadness, they end up with jaw things like TMJ and teeth problems. So that sadness, we kind of clench down and we don't breathe, and the sadness does need to come out at times. And so sometimes the universe will create scenarios that let that sadness out. There are moments, though, if you keep breathing, you keep flowing, you keep making those little adjustments, that all of a sudden you have a figure 8 that comes down the front of your body, between your legs, goes up your spine, flips over the top of your head, and comes down the front again. And this is called as above, so below, as below, so above. And when you have that perfect balance, that you are the figure 8, you can bring spirit through your body and you can manifest things. So in the highest form, an 8-year can be that you can make some money and you can feel really good about it and that things are really working. But that's not all the time. Oftentimes we have these blocks in our body about self-worth, not feeling good enough, and that 8-year can definitely put a crimp in a few things. Just remember that if you deal with those crimps and you deal with the sadness, the others can still happen. If you add your numbers up to a 9-year, the 9-year is about empathy, intuition, psychic ability, mysticism, and magic. So you can imagine that if you've released a lot of sadness from the year before and you had this plan from 2 years before, all of a sudden things can kind of feel like they're completing, like you're no longer as insecure, you're no longer fearful. You've faced a couple of dragons in the 8-year. You're feeling stronger, you're feeling more conscious, you're noticing things that you didn't notice before, you feel more like you're in the flow of intuition, and something magical starts to happen. It starts to happen synchronistically, that you need something and all of a sudden there's the person that has the answer that you were looking for. I love a 9-year, but a 9-year is about finish, complete, finish. So you need to complete some things, finish that house, finish those closets, finish that book, finish something, because when you get to the next number, and that next year number is a 10, again, we go into power. We go into power, leadership, authority, integrity, impeccability, commitment, follow through. You feel like you're the master of your own ship, the commander of your own destiny, and that's a really good feeling. You feel empowered, you feel energized, you feel like you can take anything on. Just remember, the 10 can turn into a 1, because if you add the 1 and the 0 together, you still get a 1. So also remember to be humble and be kind. So don't get pompous and arrogant. Don't say, ha ha, I did it. But actually come in the place of like, wow, I did it. Like, thank you so much, universe. I'm so grateful. And practice the attitude of gratitude for a moment in the sun. The last number in the yogic system is the number 11. The number 11 is a transcendental number. It's a spiritual awareness number. It's a consciousness number. It's one of those numbers that blows open your crown chakra and makes you see things from a higher perspective, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's why I had to go through all that stuff. That's why I have those parents. That's why this situation was happening with my boyfriend. All of a sudden you have the overview, the clarity, and the awareness. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can collapse the 11 down into a 1 and a 1, which becomes a 2. And then you fall back into negative mind or critical mind, which you don't want to do. So when I'm in an 11-year, I do yoga, meditation, breathing, walking in nature. I try and do all this metaphysical, spiritual Aquarian, uplifting things that really expand my heart even more and allow me to trust the universe and trust the flow. So I hope this helped. I hope it was interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, check out on my website. You can get more information on each of these numbers just underneath the year tab. Thank you.